Hey there, you guys. So I recently beat the first DLC for Final Fantasy 16. This is called Echoes of the Fallen. This was announced back on the Game Awards, and I immediately wanted to check it out. It took me some time to get to it, but I finally got a chance to play through it and beat it. It is a fairly quick DLC, and in this video, I just wanted to give my full review on Final Fantasy 16 Echoes of the Fallen. Is it worth the asking price? And overall, is it good DLC, and do you need to check it out? The first thing I will add to this review before going any further is that this is a DLC that takes place very late game in Final Fantasy 16. So if you are like trying to avoid any type of spoilers to the game or the DLC, I don't know how far you are or how much you guys know of the main story, but I'll try to keep this as spoiler free as possible. With that being said, I mean, spoilers are going to happen if you haven't really got that far into the actual main game. All right. With that being said, I do want to throw out some prerequisites to the DLC. So, just purchasing the DLC isn't enough to gain access to the DLC. You actually have to have a couple of things done first. So, first things first, you need to get far enough along in the main story where you have unlocked the place Origin. If you guys have not unlocked Origin yet, you will not be able to actually play the DLC. You also have to have the two side quests complete. One that's called Where There's a Will, and the other one called Priceless. Where There's a will unlock Joshua as your like party member, and Priceless will unlock Jill as your party member, as they are important to the DLC. Now, getting to the actual DLC of it all, Final Fantasy 16 Echoes of the Fallen is good. It's really really good. Um, Immediately the first thing that stood out to me was the fact that I don't want to say they rectify a lot of the issues a lot of people had with Final Fantasy 16, as if you weren't really a fan of like a lot of the talking, a lot of the things that the characters would say to one another, if that wasn't for you, if you didn't jive with Clive and Jill and Joshua and the world of Valistia, then this is kind of a slow start. It is kind of a chug. Now, for me personally, I absolutely love the characters. I absolutely love the NPCs and the engagement between them. I love this world and a lot of the things that kind of like lore wise are hidden within this world. So for me, Final Fantasy 16 Echoes of the Fallen, lore wise, was everything I wanted and more. I don't think for me there was really like a slow part. There was definitely a slower part, but it definitely crescendoed to like that high climactic moment that Final Fantasy 16 was known for. But again, if you were someone who wasn't really a big fan of a lot of the like narrative, a lot of the way that the characters speak, etc., then the first I want to say 30 minutes are going to be kind of rough for you. But the second you get past that, it is a huge like battle after battle after battle, with rewarding enemies, rewarding like character moments, awesome story that isn't integral to the main game. This doesn't add something that was needed in the main game per se, but it does add a whole lot of extra context. It does add a whole lot of extra plot points that kind of help you understand the characters more, and again the world of Valistia more, and that to me is priceless. And I was just enjoying every moment, from every fight to every piece of lore bit. As far as like the actual DLC, it's pretty much what you would expect like a Final Fantasy 16 main mission to go. You would enter an area and proceed forward in pretty linear fashion, like a lot of us, some people complained about. So if you weren't into the linear Final Fantasy 16, again, this is more of that. This is you running straight down and going enemy after enemy after enemy. I will say that the enemy variety is super awesome. I love the like ways that they forced me to, reset a lot of my skill points, look for different ways to combat enemies. As I found that some icon abilities weren't working well with some enemies and some were working better with others. So I don't think there was a specific boss fight that I didn't have to like readjust my abilities, readjust my icon set. And every single time I find myself using tons of like icon abilities that I didn't use in the base game. I used a lot more of Ramuh than I was expecting, a lot more of Bahamut than I didn't use in the main game. So as far as adding something gameplay wise to the game, it definitely forced me to think a little bit outside of my comfort zone, as I was really stuck on Shiva, Garuda, Ifrit, and Odin. So this one making me like even try tighten out something that I wasn't really a big fan of in the main game. I found purposeful in the DLC, so I really like that about that. And I think gameplay wise, this is like everything I wanted from Final Fantasy 16. I feel like going into it, I was a little challenged. I don't think it was like the most challenging thing ever. There was never a moment where I think I had to like really restart a fight or anything like that until we get to the end. But throughout the actual like main game DLC, there wasn't a moment that I was like, I can't beat this. But there were moments where I was like, ooh, like I'm glad I switched my icon abilities. I'm glad I tried something different. Because going into it again, I just don't think like my previous set of using Garuda, Shiva, Ifrit would have got me as far as switching out between again Ramuh, Bahamut, etc., etc. So overall, like the gameplay and the combat, it's more of what you like. I think something that they kind of tried to rectify is giving you like Jill and Joshua at the same time as a party member. As throughout the game, I don't think there was ever a moment where you had like two human party members plus Torgal. So now I guess maybe that kind of helps people, sit better with the whole like no party members, etc., etc. But yeah, Final Fantasy 16 Echoes of the Fallen. The gameplay is amazing. The story was really really cool. I think they found a really good way to hide that this is kind of just like another tower. Like this is just an enemy tower of going, through a bunch of enemies by adding a whole bunch of lore and character expositions. Something that I really really liked is that I feel like in this one they were able to be a little bit more comfortable with the dialogue, where in the main game I feel like everything was so serious and so brooding, 95% of the time. And I feel like this one, a lot of the character dialogues, a lot of the moments are a little more comical, a little bit lighthearted, even though the stuff that they're dealing with is, heavy, it is dark, and there is a lot of like, negative things going on around this DLC. Everyone seems to be, again, just more lighthearted. Everything seems to be more, I guess, Final Fantasy, things that like are more whimsical and more like personality, I guess, that I feel like Final Fantasy 16 was kind of missing. Especially this late in the game where you and Joshua and Jill have such a like rapport. And if if you played the game of Final Fantasy 16, and one of my favorite moments of the game is very early on when everyone's kids and Jill and Joshua and Clive clearly have a bond that you don't really get to see fully lived out throughout the game because they're so separated for majority of the game. But in this DLC, the fact that you get to run around with all three of them and they all get to engage with one another, Josh and Jill and Clive and pretty much the whole trio going back and forth and communicating, it definitely adds more to the party as well as the world, and that was something that was very much appreciated. Now, would I recommend you picking up this DLC? There's a lot of caveats to that. I think if you're someone who absolutely loved the lore or the world or the just the narrative of Final Fantasy 16, yes, this is something that you'd absolutely love. If you were a huge fan of the combat, you are gonna absolutely love this. As it forced you to dive deep into the depths of this combat system and forces you to again be a little bit more adjustable, think a little bit more outside the box. Stuff that again I wasn't thinking of during the main game. This game forced me to think outside the box. If you are not a fan of the combat and if you are not a fan of the story too much, one, why would you ever consider picking up DLC? But if you're like, for example, a big fan of the story and not the gameplay, do not pick this up. If you're a fan of the gameplay and not the story, it is going to be a little bit of a slow go for you in the beginning, so keep that in mind. The DLC is priced at $9.99. For me, I think that is a justifiable price. I think I got my money's worth out of it, especially when considering the final boss fight is probably one of my favorite boss fights in this game. I don't want to spoil it or anything because that's like probably the main thing to get the game or to get the DLC is that final boss fight. If nothing else, if you're a fan of the boss fights, definitely play through this because you will be greatly rewarded at the very end. All that being said, Final Fantasy 16 Echoes of the Fallen for me is an amazing DLC. I absolutely loved it. I think it's really, really quick and you can get it done within a day. It took me a little over 2 hours, I think, to get it done. But yeah, that's going to end it for this review of Final Fantasy 16 Echoes of the Fallen. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you guys checked it out or if you guys plan on checking it out, I'm going to end the video here and I'll see you guys on the next one.